We are 1 hour outside of Austin, Texas, a natural spring known as Jacob's Well. So we have a 1 mile path. So we'll take this way out, but on the way back, so we don't miss anything, we'll take the shortcut. Watch for snakes. And that's a bummer. So this is Jacob's Well. And from what I understand, the first European, the first white man to find this place, the well, he followed the creek to its source, and it was a well. It was pumping up 6 feet in the air. We'll go check out the well first. The labyrinth sounds cool. Now over time, they said the spring that feeds it died down. And when it did, this was in the 70s, divers went down into the cave to see how deep it was. So already 12 people have died, at least 12 people that they know of, died in Jacob's Well scuba diving. That makes this one of the most dangerous scuba diving caves in the world. So it says after a drought in the 50s and then heavy rain washed gravel into the well. This is what stopped the well from flowing. All right, here's the first trail. Looks pretty neat. Look at this, it's even got handrails. Pretty cool. It's a little rocky. Nice steps. Going to the well. There it is, Jacob's Well. So this was the little dam constructed to stop gravel from washing down in there. From what I understand, there's 5 chambers. And from the pictures I've seen, imagine the chambers look pretty much like this under the water. You know, and then you have to swim. And then there's a chimney going straight up. There's another view of the well from the cliffs. That's what feeds this stream. So the one story I heard, divers went down into the 4th chamber and gravel slid down the hill. Now the current pushes gravel up the hill. And at this particular time, there was no current. So the gravel, either the divers knocked it loose, but it all caved in and they were trapped. Bodies were never recovered. And then years and years later, divers made it down into the 4th chamber. And from the 4th chamber, there's a 5th chamber. And it's long and narrow. Well, they found dive tanks there. One of the divers did. 3 divers went in. The last diver found the dive tanks, brought them to this very narrow passage, and was getting himself stuck, so he had to drop the tanks and swim out. Now the other 2 divers that were behind him, one made it past the tanks, the 3rd man did not, and his body was later recovered, and he was right there at the entrance to the 4th chamber, stuck with these 2 dive tanks that the first man had brought there. So that was a pretty tragic story. If you could see these rock formations up here, where this is a little more eroded, this is probably what the 5th chamber looks like. It's very vertical, and it's just big enough for your chest. You have to push your tanks out in front of you. I don't know. Now other divers perished because there's false chimneys. You think you're swimming up, and you end up in a false chimney, and there's a ceiling, and you can't get out. You have to swim back down and hope you find daylight at the top. The passages between the chambers are not unlike this foot trail right here, where they get incredibly narrow. And you can imagine with scuba gear and a wetsuit, you'd have to swim through such small crevices to get to the next chamber. Shall we take a look inside? Good thing we have a GoPro. rising 6 feet in the air. Could you imagine just discovering this after following this creek all the way to its source? Here's a little map of Jacob's Well. These are the chambers. This is chamber 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what they call number 5. This is the flow of the water. Now here's what I was talking about, false chimneys. If you came up and tried to swim to the surface, you'd hit a ceiling. You'd have to actually dive back down. Now if you came up into this one, there's actually water flowing up. You could get stuck up in there. You'd have to swim back down against the current to get back to make it out. And this is where a few people have died. This is where the gravel slides are. So somebody went down in here, 2 divers, or it could have been here. I think this is chamber 4. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. So they were the first to go into chamber 4, and gravel slid down and blocked their exit. And this is chamber 5. The story I recently heard was divers came down here. The 3rd man came down and actually found the scuba tanks. Tried to take them back out. He got stuck, let the tanks go, and he proceeded to ascend. The 2 divers behind him, the first one made it, the second one got stuck with the tanks and could not make it out. They waited at the surface. The following day, rescue divers went down, found his body, tangled with the tanks, and that's that story. And then the other stories I heard was people swimming up into the false chimney. This is hard to see, especially with the shadows, but you can see the depth. It goes all the way down to about 150 feet. And here's another one of those false chambers, so you can see. And then that cave pretty much looks like how those rocks are. Vertical, the water's coming this way. Well, that's it from Jacob's Well. I'm gonna leave you with this beautiful oak. Look at the size of this sucker. Holy cow. And this is what they call the Dry Creek Trail. Found this rock formation. You can see. But this is how they describe the 5th chamber. Where you can't even have your scuba tanks on your back. You have to push them in front of you. And it's wide, but it's very shallow. Now, I couldn't imagine being 150 feet down. That would freak me out right there, knowing I was 150 feet down. But swimming through a chamber like that, there's just no way. Not for me. And you can see the ceiling falls out. Boom. And you could be stuck. Now, I would encourage you not to take anything I say as factual. These are stories I heard. I would do the research yourself. But I think that's how the story goes. And yeah, this is just amazing. This is definitely what the cave would look like under the water. It's all these layers. And then there's chimneys going up and down. This is a pretty amazing trail. Browning up some beef and a cup of coffee. Some refried beans. Some cheddar cheese. There you go. Beef, bean, and cheese burritos. Dang, they look good enough to eat. Jacob's Well. Early settlers found this place. Water gushing 6 feet up out of the ground. Right out of the rocks. Water, biblical proportions.